Hey folks, James Abrinio coming to you. It is November 14th, 2025, about 6:30 a.m. Sorry if I look a little bit rough. Baby was up, not a whole lot of sleep, so apologies. But starting my workday, as I often do, check social media in the political world, Twitter world, to see what's going on there. And I came across an interesting tweet by, of all people, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she's talking about Obamacare, but also more importantly, health insurance care in the United States, health insurance coverage in the United States. Here at the firm, obviously, we handle injury cases, both car accidents, medical malpractice, and all that kind of stuff. Health insurance, we advocate, is so important. Yes, it's super expensive, but my view is the more folks with the access to care, the better. It allows them to have better physical outcomes, and it also doesn't leave folks on the brink of bankruptcy by some tragic incident, always being just on the edge. Because if you don't have health insurance, no matter how much money you have, a serious health issue will lead to devastating financial consequences. So health insurance is certainly a must, in my view, if you can at all afford it. But in this tweet, in this video, Representative Greene is talking about alternatives to Obamacare. I'm going to play just the relevant portions that I want you to listen to. When you're looking at this, I want you to ignore a couple things. Number one, anybody that knows me knows I'm a huge Democrat, so I want you to ignore. And if you're a Democrat, you are aware of MTG, as we call her, because of all the pretty much insane things that she says. And I guess apparently her and Trump has had some falling out. So to get back at Trump now, she's saying things that are somewhat rational. So I want you to ignore the hypocrisy there, the fact that she could have been saying this stuff from day one. But the reality is, in this political environment, had she been rational, she would have never gotten elected. Secondly, I want you to ignore her obsession and the Republican Party's obsession with getting rid of Obamacare. At the end of the day, I think the reason that they're so obsessed with that is the fact that it's called Obamacare and that Obama was able to pass such important legislation. And also, I think that they're big fans of the insurance industry and, frankly, folks in the insurance industry making money. So they're doing everything they can to hurt Obamacare. Ignore all that. The goal now is to say, how do we get to a productive place to where we can maximize folks' coverage, to make sure folks are covered and to have somewhat affordability there. So she has some interesting issues. As you can see, I fast forwarded to part of this video because half of it's just her talking about how bad Obamacare is and how bad Democrats are. Even the tweet, "This entire crisis is a Democratic-made mess." I disagree with all that, but the point here is to listen to interesting ideas made even by folks on the other side of the aisle. So with that being said, let's go ahead and listen to, I think, the relevant part of this video.
On to something else. And the something else needs to be a variety of things, because a one size fits all approach to healthcare doesn't work in America anymore. And the problem we have, people just say, just repeal Obamacare. Totally fine with a repeal. However, the health insurance industry is not the same as it was back in 2014 when Obamacare went in place. A lot of these insurance companies went out of business. They pulled out of the marketplace. There's not a lot of free market solutions there. So some of the things that we critically need, and these are coming from the experts that I've been talking to. Number one is price transparency. You should be able to know top to bottom how much a knee replacement is going to cost, or a heart surgery, or if someone is getting any type of surgery or medical procedure, you should know top to bottom every single penny that it is going to cost you. And these hospitals, clinics, and doctors should have to compete with each other, and that lowers costs and drives up quality of care. Another thing that needs to happen is, I'm a big fan of HSAs. I think those are fantastic for everyone, but we also need to see people be able to come together, whether they're construction industry, whether they're whatever industry they are, they can come together, create a massive group, and then they have buying power. We could see buying power in companies like with Costco memberships, Amazon Prime memberships, you name it. That's buying power, and that also drives down costs. Another thing we need to do is really work on the PBMs. The middlemen have driven costs majorly, and that has been a crisis as well. But we also have to admit and be willing to admit that there is a percentage of our population that, due to diseases that they have, cancer they may be facing, not everyone will be able to afford health insurance in the private marketplace. So there's that side of it as well. And that's why I think it deserves a comprehensive approach that looks at everyone and their myriad of differences and their different situations. And we can't provide a one size fits all solution.
So, a lot of interesting information there. Again, take away the inclination to start arguing with what she said. And I want us to focus on some of the good things and obviously some of the obvious failures. So, important points that she has addressed here: transparency in healthcare. First of all, I don't know why this has not been a thing in the first place. The fact that you don't know how much an MRI is going to cost, I can tell you in the injury world where I'm representing folks in accidents and malpractice, I'm requesting bills to try to evaluate claims. And I can't tell you, I can give you kind of a general idea of what an MRI will cost, but for one facility, it may be 3x versus another facility. Somebody's week-long hospital stay or their inpatient rehab stay, one facility may be X and another facility may be 3x. You get certain injections and certain medications. I just can't tell you. Folks will ask me, well, what do I think their case is worth before I get the medical bills? And I'm not able to give them that idea because I've got to actually see the medical bills, because we don't know how much they're going to cost until we actually get the bills. When you think on the front end, if you can see the list price of what the procedure is going to cost, you as the consumer can shop around and figure out, well, maybe I should go to this provider versus that provider to get the standard test. That would and create incentives for consumers if they're saving the insurance company money by shopping around. That would also save insurers money, because if the bill's less, then the amount the insurance is going to have to pay out is going to be less. And it's also going to require, especially for these providers that do kind of the commodity type things like imaging, to compete with each other. So the price is going to be pushed down. This is simple market economy. This is simple capitalism that Republicans love to talk about. Not sure why that's not already a thing, but that's definitely an important issue. Her discussion about buying power, allowing groups to come together through Costco memberships and Amazon memberships. I'm not really exactly sure how that plays out, but it's an interesting idea. Now, of course, that just allows these huge conglomerates to get even more power. But, the fact that she's thinking outside the box to allow the consumer to have more bargaining power in different ways, like trade groups and trade organizations, that's interesting to talk about. I mean, that's a creative way. Now, again, the devil's in the detail, but that's something that I think would be certainly something to discuss. PBMs, which is essentially, my understanding, is middlemen that allow individuals and companies to siphon money off the top before providers get paid. Yes, let's figure out what the issue there is and attack those. These are very interesting ideas that I think that if Republicans actually wanted to sit down with Democrats and discuss, I think most Democrats would be willing to have these discussions. Now, of course, where does it fall short? What is the gap here? And the reality is, I think at the end of the day, the goals between Democrats and Republicans are just very different. And when you look at it, despite Republicans trying to paint this as they are trying to put the money to the people and screw insurance companies, they're the devil. The reality is what they're advocating for is beneficial to health insurance companies. Now, let's be clear. First of all, she made a statement that health insurance companies essentially are going bankrupt and they're pulling out. Sure, that's happening, but the reality is health insurance companies are doing just fine. And let's go ahead and share this tab real quick. If you look at United Healthcare, I mean, look at their stock price. So we were talking about Obamacare passed, it went into effect around 2014. You're seeing United Healthcare's their stock prices going up and up and up and up and up and up and up, up until just it took a fall in the last few months, but it's still hugely increased since when Obamacare was passed. So clearly somebody's making money. And just to be clear, I'm a big proponent of stock investment. I think that you should be looking at the stock market. You should be buying stock because that's where wealth can be built in addition to real estate and other things. But companies are making money. Let's be clear. They're always going to make their money. So this isn't something where we should be overly concerned about the health insurance industry. And for Republicans saying that they are trying to stick it to health insurance companies, I just don't think that's true. And here's why: when you look behind the hood, the reason, and this comes down to the fundamental reason why Obamacare was and is so expensive. Before Obamacare protections, before the ACA, health insurance companies were essentially allowed to provide folks window dressing so they felt like they had health insurance. And if they were healthy, they felt good. You own a business, you have a policy, you're young. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene's still pretty young. She is still, I can tell, doing CrossFit and all that. She's from, I don't pretend to know what's going on in her family, but from best I can tell, doing pretty well health-wise. And so when Obamacare passed and came into effect 9 years ago, she was probably even healthier. But again, I'm not going to assume, but just from best I can tell. But the point here, and I don't want to get too far personal, but the point here is, if you were healthy under the old health insurance regime, you were set because you're paying a lot less in premiums. You feel like you've got the coverage you need until you actually need it. And that's what Obamacare did to fill the gap. Number one, it allows and it requires coverage for pre-existing conditions. What is a pre-existing condition? A pre-existing condition is a medical issue that you had prior to coverage, or arguably prior to coverage, that health insurance companies and insurance companies use to exclude coverage. So let's say that you have a heart condition, and there's an argument that, well, you actually had the health condition prior to getting coverage. They're going to argue that's a pre-existing condition, therefore it's not covered, or they're going to even overtly exclude that when they're providing coverage to you. So they're going to see that you had high cholesterol or that you had a prior heart attack or something like that and simply exclude coverage. So yeah, you have a $800 premium, but if you end up needing care for the thing that you really need care for, good luck, you're paying out of pocket. And I'll tell you, this is, and I do car insurance cases, so personal injury cases. I do medical malpractice cases. Pre-existing conditions is at the heart of what car insurance companies use to defend cases. In addition to saying it wasn't their fault, it wasn't their driver's fault, they're always looking to say, look, this is not due to the crash. It was due to the car crash. It's due to some pre-existing condition. You need back surgery. Well, you had back pain before this. That was a pre-existing condition. You need shoulder surgery. Well, that was a pre-existing condition. That's not really caused by the crash. Or if it was just an aggravation. And so you only needed 6 weeks of physical therapy and you're good. That's what health insurance companies did. And that's what they're going to do if you get rid of Obamacare. And let's take Obamacare out of it. If you get rid of protections for pre-existing conditions. So you feel good if you're healthy, just like if you've got car insurance and you've got the minimum coverage, you feel good because they've marketed it to you and you feel it. But when you actually need it, you're screwed. And by then it's too late. The other thing that one of the other benefits of Obamacare or ACA is it doesn't allow huge disparities of premiums between your health and your need for care and age, right? So prior to Obamacare, if you were in your 60s, 70s, and 80s, health insurance was insanely expensive. Or if you had medical conditions, health insurance was insanely expensive, or you just didn't get coverage. And so that's what they want this framework to go back to. In fact, MTG right there towards the end of the video said the part that you really need to focus on when you're considering are Republicans being sincere in the desire to fix healthcare. And she's acknowledging there that some folks are going to be, quote, too sick to be able to afford health insurance in the private health insurance industry. What she's essentially saying there is there are going to be some people that are just so sick they're just going to have to die, or they're going to have to pay it out of pocket. That is what she's saying. And that is at the heart of why the Republicans' framework for health insurance is fundamentally flawed. And that's the reason that they're talking about getting rid of Obamacare. In addition to the politics, they want to get rid of protections for pre-existing conditions, and they want health insurance companies to essentially price you out if you're sick or old. And that's the reality. That's the fact of it. And, some folks may aptly argue about Medicare, right? Well, if you're older, 65 and older, you have Medicare coverage, so you don't really need private health insurance coverage, which that is an argument to be made. But let's be clear, if Obamacare goes down, obviously what Republicans are also trying to do is cut back coverage from Medicare as well. Okay, that's the next step if they are successful with cutting Obamacare. And so we have to recognize what's going there. The other thing that is obvious, okay, is if you take the Republican and MTG's argument to the logical conclusion, the goal here is to cut down healthcare costs and to essentially screw health insurance companies to get them out of the system. What that logically leads to inevitably is universal healthcare. If you're truly trying to cover every American and you're truly trying to make health insurance somewhat affordable, it inevitably leads to universal healthcare and a single payer system. And the reality is that's what Republicans should be arguing, but they're not, because at the end of the day, it's focused on protecting health insurance companies. But if we're looking at how we protect folks, we have to make sure that everybody's paying into the system, particularly healthy people. Because if you have healthy people that are paying their fair share, when they ultimately need it, it will be relatively affordable for them as well. And that's the goal here. And this is the thing that I never understood. And I think why health insurance needs to be treated differently. Everybody keeps talking, and Republicans keep on talking about capitalism, free market economy, and all that. The reality is health insurance is different. Health care is different, because inevitably we are all going to need the health care unless we all just die in an instant. We're healthy and then, get in a car crash and you die and you don't need health insurance because it's instant death. We are all going to need health care and health coverage at some part in our life. Whether it's tragically you're young and you get cancer and you have chronic illnesses throughout your life, or you luckily make it until you're older and then you have a chronic issue that gets to a lot of us, like heart disease and cancers and things like that, or middle life, and you have something come up. You can't avoid the need for health access and health coverage. Every human being is going to need it, just like water, just like air. It is going to be a necessity in our society. Now, can they go without it? Can you just say, look, you can't afford it, good luck? Sure. But you know what's going to happen? They're going to die. And just as likely, they're going to go to the emergency room, have to get care, and it's going to be only on an emergency basis. And ultimately, we, the taxpayer, is going to be brunting the cost, because hospitals are either going to go out of business or they're going to have to eat it, and they're going to have to pass on those costs to the consumers, which are people getting health insurance coverage or paying out of pocket. So in one way or another, we're all going to have to pay for folks that don't have coverage. But if we do it the way the Republicans want and just leave a large swath of Americans uncovered without coverage, there's going to be unnecessary harm, pain, suffering, and horrible outcomes. Because if everybody has health insurance coverage, and we're thinking about things like, how do we prevent chronic diseases? How do we encourage folks to stay healthy, like encouraging healthy diets, encouraging physical exercise, hell, maybe we cover gym memberships as part of health insurance coverage, so folks are going to the gym and staying healthier. Obviously, there are things that we can't prevent through good diet and exercise, like cancer and things like that. But my understanding is some of that stuff does relate to health and how you take care of yourself. But if we become a society that recognizes that healthcare is a right, then we're all going to be better for that. Now, I do hear folks on the right argue, well, you can't force medical providers to provide care. You can't force folks to work for free. That's just a red herring, and it makes no sense because we have things that we all agree that our public is entitled to, that we're willing to pay tax dollars for, like policemen. We agree that we need the police to protect us from physical danger and crime. We agree that we need ambulances and fire departments to protect folks. And, even in the lawyer world, we agree that even if you're poor, you're entitled to an attorney. Well, I'm a private attorney, okay? I'm not required to take court-appointed cases. I'm not required to be a public defender. I was a public defender in my younger days. I was on the court-appointed list in my younger days. So I represented people that were poor. And frankly, once I get my kids' education taken care of, I'll probably do more of that work because there are people in public service that care about the public, that are in professional fields, that believe that we are in this because we care about helping people. I, as a lawyer, feel compelled for that. I can imagine there is a large population of doctors that went into medicine to help people, that went into physical therapy to help people, that went into radiology and cancer treatment to help people. And it's not just about making money. Of course, they need to make money to survive. But we make this framework work in other things where we agree that the public is entitled to. I don't understand the obsession with the Republican Party in saying that folks aren't entitled to care. All we ever hear about, and I don't want to get too preachy about it, we talk about the difference between pro-choice and pro-life, and the argument of the pro-life folks is that everybody's entitled to life. But it seems like that logic essentially ends as soon as a baby leaves the womb. And then it's everybody to fend for themselves. So I'm asking my Democratic colleagues to be more open in discussing healthcare. Obviously, I'm also asking Republicans to come to the table too, because this is a fight that needs to be had, not for a fight, but because the American public need it. We all are going to need it. We all at some point are going to be looking at our deathbed, and we're all at some point going to be looking, if we haven't already, be looking at some serious medical diagnosis that we need care for and be scared as hell. We are all going to have family members that we're holding their hands as they're going through something horrific. The last thing that Americans should be worrying about is this going to bankrupt us? So happy Friday, folks. Sorry to start on such a serious note, but I think that this is an important topic that we're now having. You can agree or disagree about Democrats caving to the shutdown and all that kind of stuff, but we're having this discussion. The fact that MTG is actually thinking through healthcare policy, while again the failures and the logic is obvious, the fact that we're having this discussion, is important. So rather than just concepts of a plan, maybe Republicans will actually come to the table and actually come up with a plan. But I'm not holding my breath, but the fact that we're having this discussion, I think, is important. So wish you guys the best. Have a safe weekend.